Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kimberly Guilfoyle Show, live on Rumble, where facts come first and where news is done right. And more big breaking news at home and abroad. We begin in Latin America, where strikes by U.S. Marines on a vessel operated by narco-terrorists off of Venezuela is sending a strong message that the Trump administration is taking a hard new approach when it comes to continuing countering the international drug trade. The Tuesday strike that killed 11 members of Tren de Agua was announced by President Trump before adding, quote, "There's more where that came from." Here's Secretary Rubio with more on the historic effort. Watch.
For many, many years, established intelligence that allow us to interdict and stop drug boats. And we did that. And it doesn't work. Interdiction doesn't work because these drug cartels, what they do is they know they're going to lose, 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. What will stop them is when you blow them up, when you get rid of them. The President of the United States is going to wage war on narco-terrorist organizations. This one was operating in international waters, headed towards the United States to flood our country with poison. And under President Trump, those days are over.
And it wasn't a one-off. Rubio says strikes like these will happen again.
And for dictator Nicolas Maduro, it sends a chilling message that exporting drugs and cartel violence into our country and across the hemisphere will no longer be tolerated. Take a look.
Venezuela into the biggest threat to the national security of the U.S. and the stability of the region. And this is about saving lives, Rachel, not only Venezuelan lives, but also life of American people. Because as you have said, and we have heard, Maduro is the head of a narco-terrorist structure, corporation. So Maduro has finally, it's understanding finally that the time of impunity is over, and it is in his best interest to accept the will of the people that voted against him. It's time.
Senior U.S. national security officials said on Wednesday that military operations against cartels would continue and that President Trump made it clear that he's committed to fulfilling one of his biggest campaign promises, and that is to stop the flow of drugs into our borders. And meanwhile, we're also learning more about the investigation into former National Security Advisor John Bolton, where the FBI is examining evidence to determine whether Bolton illegally transmitted or gathered classified information. Among the items seized from his home and office include phones, binders, hard drives, and typed documents labeled Trump 1 to 4. Now, joining me now for reaction to this and much more, founder of Restoration of America, U.S. Army Captain veteran Doug Truitt. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Hey, Kimberly, thanks for having me on.
Sorry, Truex, I see that here. So let's talk about this because the president is going after cartels really in a way unlike we've ever seen before, okay, to stop the flow of drugs into our borders. How effective can this be, and is it long overdue?
Oh, yeah, it's way overdue. I think most Americans would say to themselves, we've been letting people in the border, we've been letting a lot of drugs in, these guys have been acting with impunity. Historically, like Rubio was saying, it's been this function of, hey, maybe the Coast Guard will catch us, maybe they won't. If they do, we'll get tried. They'll board the ship, we'll get tried, we'll end up in prison. But this is a whole new day because we need to send the message to these guys, and especially Maduro. It's interesting. He's got an entire setup now where he's the kind of drug lord there. And I think that there's more money coming in from drugs to Venezuela for him than there is from oil at this point, because they have a completely vertically integrated machine from taking the cocoa leaves, processing it, transporting it up here and selling it on the streets in our cities. And so this is target number one. If somebody's out in international waters, it's a great message. And it's genius to actually have the video of it, because you'll see that those, the guys in Venezuela that are the other guys are gonna have to get in the boats tomorrow or whatever, are gonna say to themselves, maybe I don't wanna do this like I thought I did. And let's all start rethinking this a little bit. And maybe that'll happen right away, maybe it won't. But like they said, this is gonna continue on. And I think most Americans would say, this is great, because we all have seen through fentanyl or whatever else, the damage that's been done in our country over the years. And we have our own demand problem here in our country we got to work on, but just purely what's the number one role of government? Protecting the people, and the president sees that. And if these guys are coming in through international waters and we know what they're doing, let's go ahead and take them out. And it sends a great message to all of them and Maduro as we go forward. So it should decrease, I would hope. But if
Yes.
it doesn't, I'm sure we're going to see more of this.
Absolutely. And, in your opinion, what are the next steps from here? The White House and the State Department have said the regime in Venezuela is not a government, but a massive cartel that must be stopped. What will the military response look like? Will it be an attack on, critical infrastructure, hitting military sites? What do you expect?
Well, what I'm hoping for is that we don't get involved in regime change. I'm not. We've done a lot of stuff around the world previously that we look back on and say, man, we shouldn't have been involved in that. But I think the real weakness for the Maduro regime is the fact that if they're getting this much money from the narco side of things and drug dealing, if we really clamp down on it, then they got a whole new set of problems internally, because naturally we would prefer as a country is for other countries to take care of themselves and have their own deal internally with their own issues, and see him, overthrown. Obviously, everybody says, oh, his last election, he didn't really win and all that. I totally get that. But, it's a Venezuelan problem. Our problem is that they've been bringing drugs in here. And so if we can stop our problem in our national interest to cut off the drug flow into our country, what it's going to do is hurt them internally, the Maduro government internally at Venezuela. And hopefully we would see them come out. And I think the show of force by the Marines and the Navy that they've got down there right now, it basically sends the message that we're not going anywhere, and this is step one. And I think we'll see some more of this, especially from the trafficking side. But I'm personally not in favor of any military forays into other countries at this point. Let's see what happens if we just shut this off.
I think
that's ourselves.
Yeah, that's a safe bet. I mean, like you mentioned, historically we've looked back and it hasn't been so stellar when we get involved in regime change. Let's talk about last July. Maduro, he lost the presidential election. He didn't think so, by 40 points, but he refused to give up power. And that's after he even tried to stop opponents from even campaigning. He's trapped with nowhere to go. Defense Secretary Hegseth says the dictator has some decision to make. What should we expect?
Well, it all depends. There's a lot of dynamics anytime you talk about a dictator like that. It's hard to say exactly. I mean, I remember being a kid thinking to myself, God, this North Korean thing can't go on much longer.
Right.
And here we are, it just perpetuates. So it's really hard to say. I think that if you can say, well, we're going to do everything we can to sanction the oil, and then we're going to do everything to cut off the drug supplies. Now, of course, they're doing other things in other countries, obviously, that aren't as strong as us. But who knows what percentage of the actual money they're getting internally is coming from drug dealing inside the U.S. So if we can cut that off, I think it's just a major destabilizing force, which then you don't know how far does it have to go before, Maduro opponents are more comfortable with rising up again. And, it could turn into another civil war. And believe me, I don't want any of that stuff, but we definitely need to do something in our own national interest to stop the drugs. And along the way, I think they're just going to have to deal with it in Venezuela, and Maduro is going to have to go at some point. But it's hard to say because,
it's
like
so
I said,
crazy,
the North Korean
right?
thing. I know it is crazy. It is crazy.
When you think about it, he's like, what, 40 points? Okay, I'm staying.
Yeah, right. I know.
So imagine the cheating that went on in that
Yes,
election.
exactly.
So for all the Americans, who, God bless, have lost loved ones to drugs and cartel violence, how much of a welcome change is this, what we're seeing and experiencing, in real time in this administration?
Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air. I just think back to, we can all remember when Obama came in and it was the steady slide downward. It picked up steam as we went along, and Trump first term was under fire the whole time. And then we looked at Biden, and it's just been a steady slide of decline. And this has been one of those things where I know me and, the people I deal with, and I'm sure most Americans are just like, what are we talking about? This many people dying every year from fentanyl, and we definitely have a demand problem, and I think we should be much more aggressive from our politicians talking about it, and just policy in general, and encouraging young people to stay away from this stuff, because we've kind of gotten too far away from that. There's too much. I mean, you can go back to the legalization of pot in different states, and there's all kinds of stuff going on internally we got to look at. But this whole concept of it's easy enough to say, if people are coming through international waters and we know what they're going to do when they get here, we're just going to take them out on their way in. That makes everybody here feel like, hey, we got our country back. We're at least going to do our part to make sure that the evil people, and there's a ton of like evil guys around the world like Maduro, trafficking, they run these drugs and they're trafficking people, they're kidnapping people, extorting people,
Terrible.
murdering people. and then they're bringing drugs into our place and using money that comes from our citizens, back to them to do their thing. It's like, okay, enough of that. That's easy to stop if we just have the willpower. And President Trump has the willpower, and that's a beautiful thing. And we just got to keep backing this play. And I think that we need to see demand under control better in our country, but this piece with externals doing what they want, it's got to stop. And I think he's committed to stopping. And the Mexican government, they're watching this too. And so there's going to be a whole other series of events, I'm sure, unfolding as we go forward on that.
Yeah, so very close eye. And shifting gears a bit, we're learning more about John Bolton and more evidence that he was illegally transmitting classified information, perhaps to foreign actors and other unauthorized persons. You served in the Army. What would happen if you or anyone else did that?
Oh my gosh, I remember this. That's a great question, because I do remember for a while I was an aide to a general, and we were all 3 Corps artillery and 3 Corps in Fort Hood, and there were safes everywhere in the general's offices, and it was crazy how you had to be careful with the stuff that before you walked out, it was all put away and everything else. And I remember over the years go by, and Hillary's got a server in her bathroom or whatever that was, and it's just like this mentality around, don't worry about it, let it go. And now you have it appears some foreign spy agency has come up with some emails where possibly Bolton is trying to, exchange information so he can, write a better book and make more money. Hey, nobody's above the law, and we need to get back to, there is a very strict letter of the law when it comes to classified information, for good reason, because to your point, if our military's downrange, or, our operatives, our covert operatives out there doing things that we're trying to obviously keep that all under wraps and keep it under control. And guys like him are just like, yeah, I got to write a book or whatever else and letting it go. There's a price to pay. And it sends a great message, just like this thing with, Maduro and everything. You got to start sending a message to deep staters and bureaucrats and military industrial complex people that, you may have been able to get away with whatever you want because Biden was asleep or Obama didn't care or whatever. But it's a new day. If you're going to do this stuff, you better pay attention, because you're getting paid by taxpayer dollars, and the taxpayers expect you to keep track of all that stuff. And if you're just going to let it go out in the wind, well, it's going to come back to bite you, and it's going to make everybody start to think differently going forward, which is exactly what we need. So we'll see. I mean, they showed up at his house with a warrant. You can't just get that for nothing. So
That's
there's
correct.
something there. So we're going to see. We're going to see.
It's going to be interesting, I'll tell you that much. And it's yet another example of the president's foes appearing to do what they accuse him and everyone else of doing. As they love to say, no one is above the law.
That's right. That's right. Well, we've watched for years those Saul Alinsky tactics.
Yes.
Whatever you're doing, accuse the other side of doing it, and narrow it down, and punish them like they are doing it. And it's the gaslighting, whatever you want to call it. And so, if this is real and he's been doing it, then he's gonna pay the price, And so I'm all in favor of it. We have got to get back to the rule of law in so many places in our country. And there's been a lot of things over the last couple of decades that have just been like, we're not gonna really pay attention to that, just move on, and it's not good. It's not good. It just leads to chaos, and we can't do that to our kids and our grandkids. We gotta get things back under control, and this is a great area.
I couldn't agree more. President Trump, he feels to me more like the 80-20 president, right? Because he's doing things that pretty much all Americans agree with, but Democrats find a way to be against it for just spite, I guess. How do you see it as someone who is on the front lines of many of these, policy fights?
Yeah, well, it was shocking over the years to feel like they were pushing just kind of chaos and kind of these evil things that were out there, all this, mutilating kids and all this crazy stuff. And I kept thinking to myself, how are we living in this country right now with this? And this can't be the way, because I've always felt like it's a center-right country. Sure. Even the people who don't register Republican or Democrat, if you're moderate, you're going to trend towards, Christian order as opposed to atheistic chaos, right? And so we've been watching all this chaos all these years. And so now we're at a place where it's like politically, they're married to some of these things that their base is like, they just rabid about it. And so they get it, they deserve it, because if they're going to collect money from these people, they have to endorse these things. And so they're the 20%ers, they're the 10%ers when it's 80-20 or 90-10. And, good for them, live with it. This is the bed you made, sleep in it. And so I think that as we go forward, as long as we keep doing the reasonable thing that tends towards, good order and discipline in our country, the kind of country we want to live in, the people in the middle will be like, nah, the Republicans are a safer bet. So, you know,
Right.
I think that's where we're going. So you know, couldn't be happier in a lot of ways. I'll tell you that. There's still a lot of problems and we got to
Right.
fix them. But as far as, you know, a new day, we're definitely in it.
And you see that there's, you know, it's not just rhetoric. You know, there's actions and consequences, and you're able to witness it, you know, in real time. So I have to ask, you know, the president, this is kind of funny, by the way, now says he's considering revoking Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship. Now, she actually left the country for Ireland. Oh my gosh. He, of course, picks the most flattering photo of Ms. O'Donnell. At least she did follow through on her promise to leave if Trump won.
Give her a lot of credit for that. And well, bye, you know, so don't come back. So, you know, I don't know how I feel about the revoking the citizenship piece, but I think it's great that she did leave. I think that I would love to see all those other celebrities that said all that stuff about I'm out of here. You know, I would love for them to follow her example and take off. There's a reason why most people don't do that, is because it's the greatest country in the history of the world. And, you know, go try to live someplace else, or, you know, go to try to illegally immigrate someplace else too. That's not going to happen either. So, you know, whatever. She can stay over there. She can be a tour guide in Ireland or something like that. But I think it just goes back to the, you know, when he first ran, you know, and the joke he made on the debate stage and all that stuff. The Rosie O'Donnell thing is just the ongoing sign of, you know, where our culture is with these celebrities. Like, oh, I can't stand, this is the country I made all this money in and it went great for me, but this one guy's in charge for a while, so I'm out of here. It's like, okay, fine.
So
See ya.
crazy.
Off you go.
Yeah, they're not even like, yeah, you said the 10, the 20%, they're the 100% crazy. And it's just,
I know,
you know, cry
right?
babies, you know what I mean? A bunch of
Yes.
bedwetters. So what else are you working on at Restoration of America, a great group and organization? What are you guys keeping your eye on, and where can we learn more, get all the information?
Yeah, so we have everything at restorationofamerica.com and all the socials and everything. Big thing today for us is that RFK was testifying about mifepristone, and we are watching that very closely. We put out a study along with the ethics and policy group earlier this year that said the dangers of the chemical abortion pill are way understated. Lots of women every day are being hurt by this. And so we're super pro-life over here, so we want to see those babies saved as well.
Yes.
But just from a women's health standpoint, it's horrible. And so we've been pushing on the FDA and HHS to do something about it. Been pretty disappointed. Was equally disappointed again today to hear that it sounded like it was a very much kick the can down the road session of, even though we know this is a very dangerous drug, and the Biden administration just put it out in the mail like crazy. We estimate there are about 710,000 chemical abortions last year, and there are women being hurt, about 200 women a day are being hurt, like serious adverse consequences, hemorrhage, sepsis, even death. I mean, terrible things are going on, and the FDA is acting like it's no big deal. And we really want the administration to pay attention to this. We're going to be leaning into this heavily between now and the end of the session here. So more to come, but anybody can go on our website. We've got a lot of stuff on there, all the reports and all the activity we've been doing, but that's definitely something that we gotta, as conservatives being in charge, we gotta act like it and do something about this.
And, you know, just real quick, because you did mention it, what were your major takeaways from the RFK, you know, hearing today? It was very adversarial, to say the least.
Well, I think it was more just, it had the tone politically of, you know, gosh, we really don't want to talk too much about this because the midterms are coming up. So, you know, we're not okay with that. It's really not a big deal to just go back to the standards that were in place before the Biden administration, which meant that to get the chemical abortion drug, you had to go see a doctor and had to have a visit, make sure the doctor knew how far along you were, make sure you didn't have an ectopic pregnancy, all these normal kind of informed consent, medical safety kind of things that existed before. COVID came along and the Biden administration just ideologically pushed this stuff out the door like crazy. And we're seeing the consequences, terrible stuff. And so all we have to do as an administration is just say, let's just go back to those safety standards, which is not a big deal, just do it. But it's turned into, well, we don't want to talk about it and stuff like that. But the administration should be emboldened because we defunded Planned Parenthood for a year and we just kept moving. And here we are. So let's just, you know, it's a good moment to recognize that the window is moving back to the right. Like I said a minute ago, for decades, it's been moving to the left, and it's been terrible to watch. So this is our moment to do the conservative thing and keep moving the window back to where it was. And this is definitely one of those areas. And it was disappointing today, really disappointing. So.
Yeah, it's tough. I know a lot of people were tuning into it, seeing what's going to happen. But I'll tell you, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, Doug. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
and I
Kimberly.
know that our viewers and listeners do as well. So keep up the great work at your organization. We really look
right,
forward to
thanks
having
so
you on
much.
again. Restoration of America, everybody go follow them and go to their website.
Thank you.
Take care. And we're going to be continuing to cover all of this. And in the meantime, grab yourself some 1775 coffee. We talk about it all the time. Don't compromise on taste, quality, or your values. And 1775 coffee is brewed to perfection, crafted with precision, and built on patriotism. The farm to cup process means there is quality, authenticity, and sustainability from start to finish. So why not try 1775 coffee today? It's delicious. So go to 1775coffee.com/KG and you can get 15% off your first order. And in closing, President Trump is doing what he said he would do: secure the border, keep our communities safe, and stop the invasion of drugs and crime into our country. And it's yet another example of why making America safe again matters more than ever. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to download the Rumble app, subscribe to my channel, turn on notifications, like and share, and keep spreading the message. And please also be sure to follow me across all platforms: X, Truth Social, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Stay tuned to Rumble for all the very latest breaking news coverage. Don't miss Don Jr.'s show at 6 p.m. Eastern. I hope you all have a great rest of the day and rest of the week, and I'll talk to you again very soon. God bless.